Sarojini Naidu, 1879–1949, Indian poet, was born into a Bengali Brahmin family in Hyderabad. With her father a scientist and her mother a poet, she grew up surrounded by artists, intellectuals, and revolutionaries. A brilliant student, she entered Madras University at the age of 12, about the time she began also to write poetry. In 1895 she was sent to England to study at King's College, London, and Girton College, Cambridge, before poor health forced her to abandon her studies and return home. In 1925, Sarojini Naidu became the first Indian woman to be elected as the President of the Indian National Congress, and, continuing her active participation in Gandhi's program of Satyagraha, a non-violent form of protest, was jailed on several occasions by the British. Her published poetic works include The Golden Threshold 1905, The Bird of Time 1912, The Broken Wing 1917, Selected Poems 1930, The Septed Flute 1937, with an introduction by Joseph Auslander, and The Feather of the Dawn 1961. Many of her speeches have also been published. Palanquin Bearers. Lightly, oh lightly we bear her along. She sways like a flower in the wind of our song. She skims like a bird on the foam of a stream. She floats like a laugh from the lips of a dream. Gaily, oh gaily we glide and we sing. We bear her along like a pearl on a string. Softly, oh softly we bear her along. She hangs like a star in the dew of our song. She springs like a beam on the brow of the tide. She falls like a tear from the eyes of a bride. Lightly, oh lightly we glide and we sing. We bear her along like a pearl on a string. Palanquin Bearers. Summary reference to the context. These lines have been taken from the poem Palanquin Bearers, composed on August 7, 1903, by Sarojini Naidu. Palanquin Bearers is the first poem in the first section of The Golden Threshold. Like Tagore, Sarojini Naidu, too, was more than a poet. She was one of the most illustrious Indians who contributed to the cultural, political, and social advancement of the nation in numerous ways. Her poetry is intensely emotional and passionate. Her poetry continues to delight the readers by its sheer simplicity and sweetness. This characteristically Indian poem takes us back to India at the beginning of the present century, when palanquins were a common sight in the Indian streets. The streets of Sarojini's hometown, Hyderabad, must have been full of them at that time. One might even today go to remote Indian villages, far removed from the modern means of conveyance, and observe the palanquin bearers carrying in the palki a young lady, most probably to her husband's house. The palanquin bearers usually sing songs in rhythmic harmony with her footsteps. Sarojini Naidu, the poetess, says that the palanquin bearers are carrying the palanquin slowly and steadily. They are happy and filled with joy, for they are taking a noble lady, a newly wedded bride, to her husband's house in a veiled palki. The burden of carrying the palki is not cumbersome to them, and they are carrying it very easily and with no discomfort. They are moving rhythmically through the streets with the palki. The bearers sing gaily of the beauty of the lady. The soft music leaps up in the air as the palanquin bearers bear the beauty inside. As she is carried along, the palki palanquin bearers sing the song in rhythmic harmony with their footsteps. As they are moving, the lady sways with the movement of the palki like a flower swaying in the gentle breeze. Then the poetess compares her with a bird moving fast just above the surface of the foamy river, and with the laugh that escapes the lips of the dreaming girl. Thus the palanquin bearers admire her for her beauty in their songs. The act of bearing the palanquin is joyful for them, for they are carrying a beautiful lady to her husband's house. They are advancing joyfully and happily. The lady inside is richly attired, and the palki bearers are gaily dressed and adorned. She is like a pearl hanging on a thread. Their song compares the lady's beauty with that of a star shining in the sky on a dewy night. Then the poet compares the radiance of the bride with the rays of light falling on sea waves. Despite her tear-filled eyes, for she is leaving her parents' house forever, the bride is gorgeous. Thus the palanquin bearers admire her for her beauty. The heavy palanquin is very light for them, for it is an errand of pleasure and joy. The young bride is as beautiful as a beautiful pearl hanging from a string. The palanquin bearers are carrying a royal bride in a palanquin. They are singing a song while moving. Their song is related to the situation of the bride. They say that they are bearing the bride lightly. The bride is swaying like a flower in the wind. She is gliding like a bird on the froth of a stream. She is floating quietly like a laugh from the lips of dream. They are singing and carrying her happily. They are carrying her like a pearl on a string. They are moving gently and cheerfully. She is hanging like a star in the dew of their song. She rises like a ray of light seen on the top of a tide. She falls like a tear from the eyes of bride. Analysis. In ancient days, the royal brides in India were carried in ornate palanquins. The men who carried them were called Palanquin bearers. The Palanquin bearers considered it a privilege to carry the bride. Palanquin Bearers is a musical poem. The vivid description of the journey makes us experience the soft and gentle swaying movements of the palanquin. The palanquin bearers carry the palanquin gently. The swaying movements of the palanquin are compared to a flower moving in the wind. The palanquin bearers carry the bride so softly and delicately as if she was something very delicate, soft, and precious. They carry her like a pearl on a string. The bearers do not feel the burden and move with quick steps like the birds that skim across the river without touching the water. The palanquin bearers are aware of the presence of the beautiful bride they are carrying in the palanquin. The poet uses two images deliberately to convey the contradictory feeling of joy and sadness. In the first stanza, the poet says that she floats like a laugh. This conveys the joy of anticipation as she is going to her husband's house. Her heart is full of excitement as the palanquin moves towards the house of her soulmate. In the second stanza, the poet compares the bride to a tear falling from the eyes of a bride to lend a touch of sadness to the description. This aptly describes the state of bride's mind as she is sad at separation from her parents and family. The poet has used variety of literary devices. The poem is full of descriptive similes. She is compared to objects known for their beauty, delicacy, worth and brightness. The variety of similes used lend modesty and beauty to the sweet occasion when the bride's being carried to her husband's house. The poet used repetition to give musicality and sweetness to the poem. The rhythm of the poem is even but swift. The close rhyme scheme adds to the lyricism. Alliteration, pictorial quality, and imagery are some of the other devices used in the poems to create a mesmerizing effect on the reader.